For the record, both assistant state attorneys are present, both defense counsel and Mr. Sievers. Okay? Please be seated. I'll ask our jurors again, did you follow my instructions, not talk about the case among yourselves with anybody else or look up any of the people or places involved? Even if you did so inadvertently, now would be the time to raise your hand and let me know. For the record, no jurors lifted their hand. Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Taylor Shomaker.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Good morning. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Taylor Shomaker.
And would you spell your last name for our court reporter?
Shomaker.
And Ms. Shomaker, do you live in Missouri?
Yes, I do.
And how long have you lived in Missouri?
My whole life.
And do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
And what's the range of their ages?
4 to 2.
And is Jimmy Ray Rodgers the father of one of your children?
Yes.
Now, I want to take you back and have you remember a time that was 4.5 years ago in 2015. And I want to start with May of 2015, or around that time frame. First, let me ask you this. Were Curtis Wainwright and Jimmy Ray Rodgers friends?
Yes, they were.
And can you tell us what they did as friends? What kind of things they did together?
Barbecue, drank beer, hung out.
And did there come a time when Curtis Wainwright was getting married?
Yes.
And were you and Jimmy Ray Rodgers invited to the festivities before and the wedding?
Yes.
And did you meet Mark Sievers during that weekend of the wedding of Wainwright to Angie Wright?
Yes.
And did you meet him the day of the wedding, or had you met him before?
Before.
And where did you meet him before?
At Curtis and Angie's trailer.
And were there a number of people at the trailer at his
Yes.
residence?
Mm-hmm.
And did you see whether or not there came a time when Mr. Wright and Mr. Sievers kind of went aside and had a conversation outside of everybody else?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that?
It was the night before the wedding. They had went off into Angie and Wayne's bedroom and had a private conversation.
Was there anyone else in there with them?
No.
And then the next day, you all went to the wedding?
Yes.
I want to show you two photos that are in evidence. One is State's Exhibit 74F. The other is State's Exhibit 74C. Both have been shown to defense counsel. I want to show you State's Exhibit 74F. Who do we see in State's Exhibit 74F? Or among the people there, who do we see?
Jimmy and I.
And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 74C. Do you recognize any of the people in that photo?
Yes, 3 of them.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them up on the big screen. I'm going to give you a laser pointer so that you can point to who's in the photos. And if you press this button, it will light up, okay? So let me first show you Let me first show you what is in evidence as 74F. And what is 74? When was 74F taken?
At the wedding.
And is there anybody in 74F that you particularly know?
Jimmy and I.
Can you show with the laser pointer where you and Jimmy are in this photo?
There's Jimmy and there's me.
I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. That's you and Mr. Rodgers?
Yes.
And I want to show you what's in evidence as 74C. Who do we see, who do you know that's in 74C?
Angie, Wayne, and Mark.
And when you say Wayne, is that Wainwright?
Yes.
And when you say Mark, is that Mark Sievers?
Yes.
Can you use the laser pointer and show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury who's Angie, who's Wayne, and who's Mark?
Angie, Wayne, Mark.
Were there lots of people taking photos at the wedding?
Yes, there was.
Now, I want to move forward from the wedding, which was in May, to about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 weeks later, to the very end of June. Did there come a time when Mr. Rodgers left to go to Florida?
Yes.
And do you remember what day of the week that was?
I do not.
And did he return a few days later?
He did.
Do you remember what he was wearing when he came back?
I think it was his Budweiser shirt.
And did he own that shirt when he went to go down to Florida?
Not that I remember.
Did you stay someplace else other than the residence you and he shared when he went to Florida?
I was between our residence and my mom's.
And did he pick you up when he came back from Florida?
Yes, he did.
And when he picked you up, do you remember where you were?
My mother's.
And when you came back to where you and Mr. Rodgers lived, did you see anything that had come back with him from Florida?
The cooler.
And where did you see the cooler?
In the kitchen area.
Did you see anything in the cooler at that time?
Not at that time.
And give me just a moment. Was there anything else on the counter besides the cooler?
I don't recall.
Do you remember if there was a backpack on the counter?
Oh, yes, there was.
And now you indicated you couldn't remember if there was anything in the cooler. Is that correct?
Not whenever I first walked in there. I don't remember seeing anything like as soon as I walked in.
Did there come a time when you looked inside the cooler or saw what was inside the cooler?
Yes.
And what did you see inside the cooler?
I believe it was the jumpsuit, the gloves, and shoes.
Did there come a time, are you certain that that was what did you see anything in the backpack?
I don't remember right now.
Was there a time back in August of 2015 when you talked with the law enforcement officers about what you had seen on the counter that day and what was in the cooler?
Yes, I did.
If I were to show you a page from the statement you gave to them, might that refresh your recollection as to what was in the cooler?
Yes.
I'm showing it's page 5307, page 11. I'm showing you a page of your statement, it was page 11, and you may take your time to read it, and I'm going to just, you can look anywhere you want on it, but you may want to start at the top, okay? And if you want me to give you the page before, let me do that as well. And you may want to start on the bottom of that page.
Okay. Okay.
Did that refresh your recollection as to what was in the cooler when you looked inside when Mr. Rodgers came back from Florida?
Yes, it did.
And what was in the cooler?
The gloves, the hammer, and I think it was his shoes that was in there with it.
Do you remember the color of those shoes at this time?
Yeah, they were like black dress shoes, but had like the sole of a boot.
And was there anything in the backpack that you saw on the counter that he brought back?
That was the jumpsuit.
Did he also bring something back to you personally?
He did.
Do you remember what he brought back to you personally?
A decoration.
I want to show you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit Number 50, previously shown to Defense Counsel. I'm going to take out what's in State's Exhibit 50. What is State's Exhibit 50?
A gift that he brought back for me.
Is this what Mr. Rodgers brought you, one of the things he brought you back from Florida?
Yes.
And was this hanging in your...
It was in my kitchen.
I want to talk for just a minute about where you and Mr. Rodgers, where you lived, and a little bit about your cars. So these are all in evidence, so I'm going to just start from right here, and you have the laser pointer if you need it. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 35A and then 35B. And is this the resident? Can you tell us what's in 35A?
Where we lived.
And when you say where we lived, who are you talking about?
Jimmy and I.
And I'm going to show you 35B. What do we see in 35B?
The backside of our trailer.
I now want to show you 35I. What is 35I?
Our car.
And who used that car the most?
Jimmy.
Did that car did you also use that car at times?
Yes, I did.
I want to show you State's Exhibit 35J. Now, looking to this part of 35J, which is, I guess, the right-hand side of 35J, what do we see that's on the seat of the car?
On the seat of the car? The car seat?
The car seat.
Mm-hmm.
And was that a car seat for one of your children?
Yes.
What do we see below the car seat?
My backpack.
And what did you use your backpack for?
A diaper bag.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 35L. Is this the backpack that was in the car?
Yes.
Now, you talked about a backpack that you used as a diaper bag. Is this that backpack?
Yes.
Do we see anything in it that you particularly remember that reminds you that it was your backpack?
My kids' sunscreen.
Can you just show it to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury with a laser pointer? Now, when you say you use that backpack as a diaper bag, what does that mean? What kind of things did you keep in the backpack?
Diapers, clothes, wipes, sunscreen.
And was it always filled with those type of items?
Not always.
Did Mr. Rodgers ever use that backpack, or was that one you used with the children?
He had used it, yes.
And I want to show you State's Exhibit 35P. You talked about a cooler that you saw on the counter. Is this the cooler?
Yes.
Now let me just go back to 35L. Was it your backpack that you saw on the counter when you came into the kitchen, or was it another backpack?
It was that one.
It was this backpack?
Mhm.
Thank you. Excuse me, let me close this. Now, we were just at the end of June. I want to move a few weeks forward, just a couple of weeks further on time, to July 18th. Were you at home that day when two detectives Down and Levitt, came and knocked on your door?
For the first time?
Yes, for the
Yes.
first time. And when they initially knocked on your door, was Mr. Rodgers home?
No.
Did he get home a little while shortly thereafter?
Yes.
Now, after he came home and the detectives left, I want to talk about what Mr. Rodgers did and what Mr. Rodgers did. So the detectives have left, and what did Mr. Rodgers say or do?
I don't think he spoke to him very long. I think he pretty much shut him down. And then after they left a business card on the counter, and he grabbed that card and got rid of it. I never seen it again.
Did he also take anything to the dumpster to throw out?
Yes.
What did he take to the dumpster to throw out?
The shoes.
And were those the shoes that had been in the cooler when he got home?
Yes.
What happened after that?
We'd went to his work down in Doe Run, and he got his phone out of a locker and put it in a drinking fountain and then stomped it and smashed it.
Did it end up being in pieces?
Yes.
Do you remember how many pieces?
I do not.
And how did you all get to his work? How did that happen that you went with him to his work?
He was just like, get in the car, we gotta go, and I did, and we went down to his work, and then everything started like unraveling.
When he said, get in the car, we're going, how did you feel?
I was nervous.
So, do you remember what happened after you left Doe Run with the phone in pieces? Where did you all go next, or what did you do?
Drove back towards our home, and he had me throw it out the window piece by piece.
The phone?
Yes.
Was there anything else that during that car ride he asked you to throw out?
Not that I remember.
Did there come a time when you got back to your home with him?
Mm-hmm.
Did you end up taking another car ride with him to throw out something else?
He told me we were going to my mom's, I think it was, and he grabbed other things, and on the way to my mom's, he had me throw out more things.
And was one of those things a pair of overalls or coveralls?
Yes.
And do you remember where you threw them out?
On Highway 47.
And that was right after the detectives had been and talked with him and left.
Mm-hmm. Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
Now I want to move another month forward, about 5 weeks later into August. Was there another time, a second time, when law enforcement officers came and knocked on your door?
Yes.
This time, was there more of them?
Yes.
And why were they there? Do you know?
Warrant for Jimmy.
So were they doing a search warrant were they searching the residence?
Yes.
And while they were doing that, where were you?
Home. On the couch.
And did they have you get out of your home and sit outside?
Yes.
And did you end up talking to Detective Downs while you were sitting outside?
Yes.
And did you end up telling him about certain things that had been thrown away?
Yes.
Did he ask you if you could take him to those?
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes.
I want to show you what's in evidence as 37A, B, C, and D. There's photographs, and again, I'm going to just display them here, and you've got the laser pointer. I'm going to show you 37A. What are we looking at in 37A? Do you remember?
Yes, that's the highway.
Is that, and when you say that's the highway, what highway are we talking about?
I believe that is the highway by his work in Doe Run.
And I want to show you 37C. Actually, let me show you 37B. Is this that same road?
No, I don't
that
think
it?
so.
Can we see you in that picture?
Yes.
Where are you? Can you point it out with the laser pointer for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury? And what were you doing? What were you helping law enforcement do? Why were you on the side of the road?
Helping them look for the things that he had me throw out.
And while you were on that road, did you find the blue coveralls that you had thrown out?
Yes.
And do you see them in 37C?
Yes, I do.
Can you show them where they are to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury? And I'm going to show you 37D. And can you tell them what we're looking at in 37D?
The coveralls.
And are these the ones that Mr. Rodgers had you throw out the window?
Yes.
Now, do you recall where on the road, was there a bridge or anything near to where these were thrown on the road?
Yes.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about that bridge and throwing out the coveralls?
Well, he told me to throw the coveralls off of the bridge into the water, but my response was delayed and I threw them out after the bridge.
After that evening or that day where you were throwing out the various the phone and the coveralls, I want to talk about that night after all that. Did you and Mr. Rodgers have a conversation when you were both in bed?
Yes.
I want you to tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how that conversation came about.
I brought up the conversation. I was the one that pretty much told him I knew that he had something to do with the murder, and asked if he killed her with a gun or how many times he shot her, and he said that it wasn't.
May we approach?
Sure.
The night after Mr. Rodgers drove you to throw away the coveralls, the overalls, and the parts of the phone that you were having in bed, what did you first say? Let's take it step by step. What did you first say to him?
I was just like, I knew that you had something to do with this.
And then did you ask him a question?
I did.
What did you ask him?
I asked him.
Noted for the record, overruled.
I had asked him if he killed her with a gun.
And what did he say to you?
No.
Did he tell you how he killed her?
He said they killed her with a hammer.
Is law enforcement paying you to come to court to testify?
No.
And have you been untruthful about anything you've discussed or testified to?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
From the first time you spoke to law enforcement, that first time in July of 2015, did you ever have you been truthful with them?
Objection,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Overruled, you can answer, ma'am.
Yes.
And has anyone told you to be untruthful?
No.
And when they were searching the home that you and Mr. Rodgers shared on August 25th, were you truthful when you were talking with them then?
Yes.
Did there come a time in 2016 when you called Detective Downs in late January or early February to see if there was any financial assistance?
I did.
And why did you call him at that time? Were you in financial trouble?
Yes.
Why were you in financial trouble at that time?
Because my car was gone, my house was gone, and I had no way to do anything or work.
And what did Detective Downs say when you called him?
That he'll see what he can do.
And did you, at the end of February, was Detective Downs able to do something?
Yes.
And what was it that he was able to do?
He was able to help me with my rent.
And how much money do you receive? How much money did you receive?
I don't know. I know that I got $400 a month.
So has it been $400 each month?
Except for the very first check, it was first and last.
I want to just go back for a moment and talk again about the conversation when you were having with with Jimmy, when you were in bed with him. When he talked to you about the hammer, can you describe his demeanor, how he was acting, or the tone of his voice when he said that?
He acted like he didn't, like, it wasn't nothing to him. Like, I don't know, he had like a little chuckle to, like, after he said it. It was like he had no remorse.
Did he tell you whether or not he expected to make any money from this?
Yes, at one point in time.
And did he tell you how much money he expected to be making from this?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
I think it was
Objection,
10,000.
hearsay.
Overruled.
Did Jimmy have a nickname for himself?
Yeah.
What was his nickname?
Jimmy the Hammer.
Give me just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
You know the blue jumpsuit that you were talking about that you threw out the window? Do you know where Jimmy got that jumpsuit?
Yes, from Tyler Juliet.
And Tyler Juliet, is that a place or a person?
That's a person whom he worked for.
And do you know where he worked for Tyler Juliet?
Multiple places.
Tender the witness, thank you.
Defense.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ms. Shomaker, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to first start off, you talked about going to the get-together at Mr. Wright's residence. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
You said there were a lot of people there. Do you recall that?
Yes, there was.
And the fact is, you had been drinking that evening, is that correct?
Yes.
To the point that you were drunk.
Later that evening, yes.
Okay. How many people would you say were there?
Guesstimate of like 10 to 15.
Okay. And was everyone inside Mr. Wright's residence, or a combination of inside and outside?
A little bit of a combination.
Okay. So you said that you saw Mr. Wright and Mr. Sievers go off together. Is that correct?
Yes,
Were you inside or outside?
I was inside.
Okay. And was there anything about Mr. Sievers that was special to you, or made you look his way?
I mean, perverty, but
What's that?
kind of a pervert, but I didn't really look his way because of it.
Okay. Do you recall when you said that you looked inside the cooler? Do you recall that?
Yes,
And you said you saw a ball peen hammer. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay.
I do remember that.
And just so
now.
we're all clear, a ball peen hammer isn't the hammer that has the two ends protruding. It has the kind of the ball on the other side of the striking surface. Is that correct?
Both sides had like a ball on them.
Okay. Okay, so that's what you recall seeing in the cooler.
Yes,
Do you recall if you remember Mr. Rodgers bringing that with him when he left for Florida?
I do not. I don't remember seeing him pack any kind of bags.
You said that you saw Mr. Rodgers throw out some black shoes. Recall
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And that would have been on June 18th, is that right? Or July 18th, I'm sorry, July 18th.
I'm unsure of the exact date.
Where did he throw those shoes out?
In the dumpster in the trailer park where we lived.
How far away from your residence was that dumpster?
Maybe 100 feet.
Okay. So it didn't take him long to do that?
No.
Do you recall if the jumpsuit that you threw out, do you recall if that was in the residence, or did you have to go somewhere to get it?
That was in the residence.
It was in the residence?
Hmm.
But he didn't throw out that jumpsuit with the shoes, is that correct?
No, he didn't.
Okay. And I believe you testified when you threw out the jumpsuit, it was rolled up in some gloves. Do you recall saying that?
No, I do not.
Oh, never mind. You got rid of the gloves at a separate time, is that correct?
It was the same time, but it was separate from the jumpsuit.
Okay, okay, I apologize. Jumpsuit, you said you wanted to throw that over a bridge, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you recall where the actual water was?
Underneath the bridge.
Well, there was a kind of a large embankment there, wasn't there? About 40 feet?
Can you specify for me? 'Cause I don't-
So from the road to where you could actually throw something in the water, there was about 40 feet of pavement and land.
I don't think so. but-
Okay. In 2016, you said you called Detective Downs to see if there was any financial assistance. Where were you working at the time?
I wasn't.
Okay. How were you making money?
I wasn't.
Well, how were you paying your bills?
I wasn't at the time.
Okay. So you had an agreement with the Lee County Sheriff's Office to testify. Do you recall that?
No, I do not recall that.
Your Honor. Showing the state, page 29, line 19 of Ms. Shomaker's deposition. Ma'am, do you recall having your deposition taken in this case?
Yeah.
You remember I came up to Missouri, we sat down, we took the day. Was that about November 28th of 2018?
Yes.
Okay, and do you remember swearing to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Sir.
Are you again referring to page 19?
29.
29, thank you.
I'm showing you page 29 of your deposition, okay? And see page, line 19? Do you recall? Can you read that?
I asked a little bit about my agreement. You have,
Your Honor, I want to object. Are we refreshing recollection? I'm
Sustained.
not clear.
Okay. I asked you in this deposition, I asked you a little bit about any agreement you have with the state or law enforcement. Is it your understanding that you have an agreement to testify against Jimmy Rodgers? Do you recall your answer? You said, well, yes, I have an
Your
agreement
Honor,
to
I
testify.
object.
Sustained.
Okay.
You need to ask her if she remembers.
Do you
and then
recall,
she can answer.
do you recall saying that?
I do not.
Okay. I'm going to give you this deposition. We're going to take a look to refresh your recollection.
I see it, I just still don't remember.
Okay. So this doesn't refresh your recollection?
No.
It doesn't refresh your recollection of having said that or having an agreement with law enforcement?
Haven't said that.
Okay. Do you recall having an agreement with law enforcement?
Somewhat.
Somewhat?
I mean, it wasn't like, and I don't know how to explain it. I don't remember them asking to agree to do it. I just remember going forward and telling them that I wanted to help with it.
Okay. And further, you agreed to testify against Mr. Sievers, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't recall whether or not Jimmy actually told you if there was going to be any money or not any money or any specific amount, correct?
I remember it being $10,000 whenever he got back.
Okay. And do you remember a $55,000 from Crime Stoppers? Do you remember that number?
Yes. I
Okay.
do.
And do you anticipate that at the conclusion of this case, if Mr. Sievers is convicted, you will receive $55,000?
No.
Okay. A moment. All right. I'm showing the state now, page 112 of Ms. Shomaker's deposition. And just so we're aware,
I'm sorry, is there a question pending?
is it that you don't remember the $55,000 from Crime Stoppers, or you don't remember if you're going to receive the $55,000?
I remember the $55,000 being mentioned, but I don't remember if they said that I would receive it.
Okay. Why do you remember the $55,000 from Crime Stoppers?
I just remember them mention it on the porch whenever they came to question
Who's they?
the detectives.
Okay. And so when they're talking to you, they said that there's $55,000 in money from Crime Stoppers out there. Is that correct?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And that you might be eligible to get some of that $55,000 if you cooperate. Is that correct?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And again, at that time, you had no job. Is that correct?
No, I didn't.
You had no money coming in. Is that correct?
I mean, Jimmy worked. We had his money coming in, but
Okay. Speaking of Jimmy, you told us about the conversation that you had in bed that night. That would have been in On June 18th, is that correct?
I'm unsure of the exact date, but somewhere in there.
Would have been after the first time police came to see you?
Yeah.
Okay. And you had that conversation with Mr. Rodgers, is that correct?
Yes.
And after that, you continued to co-reside with Mr. Rodgers, is that correct?
No, not really.
What do you mean, not really?
I started staying with my mom.
You continue to have correspondence with Mr. Rodgers when he was in jail, correct?
Yes.
You never changed your cell phone number, right?
No.
Okay. You never changed your email, correct?
No.
And in fact, since this began, you've gotten remarried, is that correct?
Yes.
And you didn't even change your last name. You're still Taylor Shomaker, correct?
My name is changed now.
Your name. When did you change your name?
A few weeks ago.
Okay, so that would have been in between Mr. Rodgers' trial and today then?
Yes.
Okay. When Jimmy took his phone out and smashed it, you recall saying that?
Yes.
Did he then replace it with a different phone?
Yes.
Where did he get the new phone?
I don't remember right now.
Do you remember if the new phone was the same make and model as the old phone?
I don't remember.
Okay. He testified that his name was, his nickname, you said was Jimmy the Hammer, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the fact is, he was really the only person who called him that, is that correct?
Yes.
Nobody else called him that, is that correct?
Objection is to the form of the question. No one else called him that.
Overruled.
No one else called him Jimmy the Hammer, correct?
Not that I can remember right now.
Okay. And again, since 2016, was it February 2016 you started receiving Lee County funds?
I think so.
Okay, and you've received $400 a month since then, is that correct?
That's correct.
So at this point, we're at about $20,000, is that correct?
Objection to the form of the question.
Overruled.
At this point, we're at about $20,000, correct?
I don't know.
Do you know what Mr. Rodgers ever did with that ball peen hammer from the cooler?
I do not.
Do you recall if the police ever threatened you while they were doing their investigation?
I do.
Okay, and did they?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And specifically, what did they threaten you with?
Taking my kids.
How many kids did you have at that time?
2.
And during that time, you also found out that you were pregnant with one more, is that correct?
Yes.
You love your kids, right?
Yes.
You don't want to be separated from your kids, right?
Yes.
You don't want anything to happen to your kids, right?
Yes.
So law enforcement threatens you for taking your kids away. You take that seriously, don't you?
Well, yes.
Okay. just so we're clear on the, kind of on the timeline in August, okay? We were talking about July. I want to go forward to August now. In August, that's when you took law enforcement to go and help them find the jumpsuit and recover the phone parts. Is that correct?
I'm unsure of the exact dates.
You're unsure of the exact dates?
Yeah.
Do you remember if Detective Downs, if he made a video of you finding that jumpsuit?
I do remember that.
Okay. And do you recall finding the jumpsuit on one day and then finding the phone pieces on the following day? Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. And who was with your children when you were out with the police all that time?
My mom.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Nothing further.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. How long had you known Jimmy Rodgers before the wedding of Wainwright and Angie Wright?
I'm unsure.
Was it a matter of months?
Yes.
And do you remember about when you moved in with Mr. Rodgers?
A few months after we met.
So was that about around the time of the wedding, or was it right after the wedding?
It was before the wedding.
And did Mr. Rodgers pay the rent?
Yes.
And did Mr. Rodgers pay a number of the bills?
Yes. I tried to work, but he wouldn't let me.
So when you, well, let's talk for a minute about when you told law enforcement about what Mr. Rodgers had said to you and about where the items were thrown out. Did your life become better or worse for having told them?
Can you...
That's a terrible question, isn't it? When you told law enforcement that about Mr. Rodgers' statements to you and you took them to where the suit and the cell phone are, was Mr. Rodgers arrested?
Yes.
And did he stop paying the bills?
Yes.
And did you then have to figure out how to pay for all the bills?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say you didn't come out ahead by letting law enforcement know what Mr. Rodgers had said to you?
Yes.
If law enforcement had never given you the $400, why did you come into court and testify today?
Because it's the right thing to do.
And if law enforcement had never given you a dime, not $400 a month, would you still come into court and testify?
Objection,
Yes.
speculation.
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Defense.
The fact is, Ms. Shomaker, that law enforcement has paid you $400 each month, correct?
Yes.
And but for your involvement in this case, that would have not have happened, correct?
Yes.
And further, they did threaten you, correct?
They did.
Okay, nothing further.
Any further questions?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Is this witness to be retained or released?
Released, Your Honor.
Retained, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I just want to make it clear. Can we approach?
We'll talk about it at the next break. Ma'am, you're subject to recall. Please don't leave the courthouse, and we'll be with you shortly.
Sorry, I get up and walk out?
Yes, ma'am. With that, it's almost noon, so we'll go ahead and we'll take our lunch break for the day. I'm going to ask that you not talk about the case among yourselves with anybody else, or look up any of the people or places involved. And so 120. 1:20. See everybody then. Please be seated. State you have 2 witnesses left today?
I think we have 4 witnesses left today.
Okay.
I told the court 5, but I really meant 7.
Okay.
See, that's why I have to object when numbers are mentioned. Math is challenging for many people. Just like I told the court once 20 and it was 19.
They're all lined up to be here today.
Everybody's here,
Okay.
all except 1 are here.
Okay.
But
But
they're
they're
all-
available if we get through everybody.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So the state potentially is resting today.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. As to Ms. Shomaker, I'm assuming it's because you're done with her, so it's their responsibility.
I think it's both their responsibility as to hotels, et cetera, and also, we had, having told her we were flying her in and flying her out today, there's no child, she managed to find someone for the children. I just wanted noted that there's going to be a limit to how she can do that, as opposed to needing to literally provide for the childcare, which we.
Your Honor, I simply need her because there is one exhibit, which is the video of her finding the jumpsuit that I wish to get into evidence. And obviously, this is not my case in chief. This is not my turn to present evidence. That's all I want her for, candidly. I anticipate, Your Honor, that if Ms. Shomaker were recalled, I would elicit approximately 5 minutes worth of testimony.
Your Honor, I don't know that the video is admissible, so as to its admissibility, the state wouldn't stipulate. But if what we're talking about is authentication, in other words, is this the video that was taken while you were on the side of the road and showing it to her, as to that aspect of it, the state would not object to the authentication, but the state would be objecting to its admissibility. So as to the portion I think that Ms. Shomaker can provide, I'm sorry,
Okay, no.
I'm done.
Okay, and they are correct. I do need her to authenticate that.
That's it?
That's it. So if they're willing to stipulate to authentication, even if they don't stipulate to admissibility, then I have no further reason to retain Ms. Shomaker, and she may be released.
You stipulate to the exhibit? Or do you want to think about it over lunch? What are we doing?
I want to think, I think yes, but let me just think about and confirm,
Who filmed it?
that's,
I believe it was Detective Downs, but I don't, and again, I also intend to have Detective Downs.
Well, couldn't Detective Downs authenticate it?
He can authenticate that he was the person who made the video.
Well, he was there, he saw it, I would imagine he could authenticate it.
He can authenticate it. I simply want Ms. Shomaker.
When's her plane?
this afternoon.
What time?
Now you're asking me questions I can't
Well,
answer,
I
Your
mean,
Honor.
I'm only asking that because if it's no harm, no foul, you guys can discuss this and maybe work it out over lunch or agree that the detective can authenticate it. I don't see why he couldn't, but everyone seems hesitant. I don't call the witnesses, so I mean,
Your Honor, I have said, I have no, if the purpose of calling Ms. Shomaker is to say I'm the person that's in that video, and that video was filmed that day when I was on the side of the road, if that's the purpose,
That's the purpose.
the state will stipulate that she's the person in the video and that it was shot on that particular day.
you have this marked as an exhibit for the state to review, or it's the exact length of what the state gave you?
It is exactly what they gave me.
Okay.
We
So
all
we're
know-
agreed we can let go of Ms. Shomaker?
That's fine, Your Honor, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. That brings me to the last thing that I was gonna bring up before I did bring it up before Thanksgiving on the second to last day, and then the last day I forgot, and this morning I forgot. Are we waiving sequestration or not? State?
The state waives.
Okay.
Defense waives, Your Honor.
Okay, and that's for guilt phase only at this point?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. That way I don't have to scramble for hotel rooms. I just needed to know
Yeah.
at least a few days in advance.
Based upon the two jurors' concerns last week, which were de minimis contact, I have no reason to not believe that they are not scrupulously upholding this court's instructions.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
They are.
See everybody at 1:20.